the story begins. Will Reynolds was a brakeman on the Southern Railroad, and at that time, Southern Railroad operated from Tuscumbia to Birmingham. And they used to have the North Alabama. It would go right up 5th Street, and you can still see where the tracks cross 6th Street and going out to Junction. It was a privately owned railroad, later taken over by the Southern Railroad, and they transferred Will to Birmingham. He was a brakeman. I explained to you about a crew on a freight train at that time. You had the fireman, the engineer, the conductor, and the brakeman. And whenever they have to stop to brake the train to drop off some cars at Barton or Cherokee, Iuka, that was the brakeman's job. He was transferred down to the Birmingham division and worked out of Parrish, Alabama, back to Birmingham. They had a Southern Railroad at that time, had a train that came from Columbus, Mississippi, and went down to Paris and went into Birmingham. If you want to go to Birmingham on a train, you caught the NA and go to Russellville, Red Bay, down that way down to Paris, and you had to change trains in Birmingham. Now that's the train story. But at any rate, Will Reynolds was a brakeman on the railroad, and he lived on North Commons. Now the best way to explain the Commons right now is the Tennessee Valley Arts Center is on the Commons. The Helen Keller Library is on the Commons. The Deshler Stadium is on the Commons. The Commons was patterned after Boston, where they had just a section of the town that was square, went all the way around the town. And Tuscumbia was the only town in Alabama that had a commons. And at that particular time, you couldn't build on the commons. You didn't have any roads on the commons. If you go up Broad Street, right where Deshler Stadium practice field is right now, the stadium itself is on the commons, but the practice field is adjacent to it, and there were 4 houses facing north between Broad Street and 1st Street, right there in that bottom in that practice field. That's where Will stayed. At any rate, he owed the Isbell Merchandise Company $5. The bill had been several months old because he'd been transferred to Birmingham. But on Sunday morning, April 5th, 1905, he was in town, and he came down to the store, and he and Mr. Isbell had a confrontation about the bill. Now, when only 2 people are present, and then one is dead, the only story you can go by is the one that's living. There were only 2 people in the store, it was Will Reynolds and Mr. Isbell, the owner. They had a confrontation. Now, whether it was physical, verbal, or what, but it was about the bill. Will left this store right here and went to his house, which was on the North Common, right there where the Deshler Stadium practice field is. The stands were on the edge of the common. Those 4 little houses were facing North Common. Later on, Mr. Isbell and the sheriff came up there to serve a warrant on Will Reynolds about this bill. And Will said, well, let me get my hat. And he retreated to in the house. Now, he was really going to the front of the house because they came up on the back door. And while he was back in there, Mr. Gassaway, the sheriff, burst the screen and stuck his hand in the door to unhook the door to go in. And he was greeted by a 45 shot from a Winchester rifle that knocked him off that porch back out in the yard, and he was shot through the bowels, but he retreated and got under a wagon out there in the backyard of the house and began to return Will Reynolds' fire. He was the first one that was killed. Mr. Isbell retreated and went and found the sheriff's brother, who was the chief deputy. And in his excitement, he told his story. He ran back over there and got up on the porch, and they had a verbal altercation between him and Will, and he told Will that he was going to arrest him and murder for all this, and Will backed him off that porch. That was 2 dead. Then the rumor spread, and people started gathering, watching the gunfire that was taking place between the deputies and Will Reynolds in that house. Now, Mr. Bob Hyde, who owned Palace Drugstore, was a teenager at that time. And he used to tell the story that his father came up there and got him and carried him home. I said, all them flying bullets up there. But he was an actual witness to what took place that Sunday morning. Gunfire went on between them up until around noon. They couldn't get him out of there. Now, Webb's Gin used to sit on the hill right here where that cabin is sitting now right in front of Mr. Carmichael's office. They gin cotton there, and they put it on a sled and pull it off down the hill there out the way. They got the bright idea to come down here and get that cotton sled, put a bale of cotton on it, and hitch a mule to it, and 2 men got down behind the bale of cotton, and they went up Broad Street, and when they got right in the middle of the intersection, Will shot the mule. And the 2 men that was on the sled behind the bale of cotton attempted to run to safety, and he killed those 2. So now you had 4 dead men and a dead mule all in the middle of the street up here on a Sunday morning, and naturally the word had gotten around, and every crowd was gathered. They were on the hill over there about where the water tank is now. The Winston family lived up there, and you notice it's a hill right south of Dexter Stadium. There are houses there now along First Street. So people were everywhere watching the gun battle. It proceeded on, and they wasn't able to get him out. And there were 4 houses there, so they made a decision to set a fire in the house that was on the north end of the 4 houses. But like today, the first 2 houses burned, but before the 3rd house caught a fire, the rains came and put the fire out. So that didn't succeed. Well, they called the governor to request the National Guard to come out for him to activate the National Guard. And after a discussion, they decided that they would get a rifle team, a marksman, from the National Guard that was in Florence. And after they authorized this National Guard rifle team to come over to assist them in trying to get this man out of his house, the man parked the truck right in front of the Winston home, right where the steps come down from the Winston home to the field house there. The field house wasn't there at that time now. Right out in the open. And Will was standing on the front of his house, which was facing the north, and he started shooting, and 1 bullet killed 2 men sitting in the back of the truck.
And that's on the other side of the gully where the stadium is now, right?
That's on the north. That's on the north side of the stadium, up there where the field house is, that old rock field house is right now.
But he was shooting from the south side.
He was shooting from the south side, down right at the gate where you go in the south side of Dexter Stadium. Those 3 houses were right along the commons. Now, you can get your best visual of how the common looked at that particular time if you go down behind the Tennessee Valley Arts Center on the left-hand side there. The commons runs along there. Those houses down there still face the North Common. We done built stuff all over it, and you can't tell where the line is at the other place. It's got the cemetery on the south side. And Well, anyway, that's another story. But back to the story, you had one mule and 4 dead men lying out there in the street, and the man drove the truck up and parked it right in front of the steps that come down from the Munson home to the North Common Street. And before they could get out the back of the truck, Will was standing there in the door shooting them like he picking off clay pigeons. One bullet killed 2 men because they were sitting in the truck, and the rest of them started scrambling for cover, and 2 others were shot in the extremities in their legs, and the bullet broke their legs. So now you got 6 dead men and a mule, and the man is still in the house. They tried to burn the house down, gonna burn all 4 houses down. 2 of the houses burned, but before they got the 3rd house, which was next door to where Will was, really like this morning, a strong shower came, put all the fire out. And this went on and on and on after you had 8 men killed. And they wanted to get him out before dark. So they finally tried to set the 3rd house on fire again, and they were successful in throwing a lantern on the porch of the house that set the house where Will was on fire. And people could see him moving from front to back of the house while the house was burning. And he continued to fire his gun, but he was overcome by smoke and fire and was burned up in that house. That's how they finally got him. After he was killed, the people went in and they desecrated his body. People cut off his fingers, and everybody was trying to get souvenirs and all that. Now, you can get that story off the internet. I have a copy of it right here, which lists events in order in which they occurred and tell all about the story and so forth. Several years ago, they had a writer from the ABC television network came over here, and she was trying to gather stories. She was going to write a story about the Will Reynolds incident. And she got all the material together, and she wrote the story. I never did hear any more from her, but I had her card at one time, so I called her and asked her what happened to the story that ABC was going to do. And she said she wasn't successful in that. They wouldn't accept the story because the scene where he shot the mule, the animal rights people objected to that. And the scene where the man parked the truck on the steps in front of the Munson home with all the rifle team in the back of it, and he started shooting them, and they were scrambling out the truck. I said, why would the man park the truck right there? There were so many things about it that I guess in the excitement of what was happening, I guess haste makes waste. Now let me rephrase that. Haste makes death. Because
I'm 200 yards away. That guy can't be that good a shot.
He was an expert rifle. They admit that he had a .45 caliber Winchester rifle, and he had put on exhibitions with his marksmanship. Everybody knew he was an excellent marksman. And so Charles Gassaway, the sheriff, shot through the bowels. Bill Wallace, Riverton, Alabama, shot through the head, dead. Hugh Jones, Sheffield, shot through the chest and head, dead, naturally. William Gassaway, he was brother of the sheriff. He was shot dead. He was rather hasty himself to go up on them steps and try to go in that house. And Jim Payne, Sheffield, shot through the right lung. Pat Prout, dead. James Spinney, arm fractured. Bob Patterson, shot in the ankle. Those were the two men on the rifle team who was sitting in the back of the truck right up there where the Dixie Stadium field house is. And but when you look at how they exposed themselves to an expert rifleman, it was just a comedy of errors. And that the aftermath of that thing went on for a while. And Mr. Bob Hyde up at Palace Drugstore, he was a teenager at that time, and he said his father came down and carried him home, so bullets flying everywhere. And he had his grandson, Howard Chappelle, stays on 6th Street up here.
Stewart, yeah.
Stuart Chappelle. He has pictures and some actual articles that came from the newspaper at that time, and he tells a wonderful story about the Will Reynolds incident and how it occurred. I mentioned the fact about wet nurses at that time, and aristocratic white ladies, they just had the baby. But then they turned it over to the wet nurse to nurse the baby. And see, they didn't have pet milk. The only thing they had was cow's milk and breastfeeding at that time. But wet nurses were an occupation, and the child became attached to the wet nurse. And white aristocratic folks had the babies, but they only had black women as wet nurses, because if the child became attached to the wet nurse, it was very easily to tell me that she ain't your mama. And, that. But that was a privilege of the aristocracy. Remember Dr. Gary, even in his time, referred to wet nurses. He recommended to people that were having trouble nursing children and so forth, that they had people that they would call that provided that service. So the Will Reynolds incident sort of disturbed the atmosphere. People became suspicious of each other. My father was a fireman on the railroad for 44 years, and Will Reynolds was a railroad man. He was a brakeman. And Daddy refused to carry a pistol. He said, no, you're not doing nothing but looking for trouble. And his famous saying, and he followed this to Sheriff Buddy Aldrich. Years later, I went down and wanted to get a pistol permit. Sheriff Aldrich told me, said, well, I don't have no problem with issuing you this permit, but just remember, if you pull the trigger, you can't change your mind.
You can't take it back.
And you can't take it back. And today, I've never had a pistol permit, and I think about the Will Reynolds incident because people were going around armed at that time because of fear. And some of the good people of Tuscany says, we can't live under these circumstances. I mean, the tension was so high. There had always been a good relationship. And the good people of Tuscany, as a result of that particular incident, came to their senses. It says, we are too interdependent on each other. Wet nurses, cooks, didn't have washaterias, washing machines. Then people came to the house, we picked up the laundry and carried it home. We depended on each other like that. On 8th Street, where I'm living on the corner where I was born, the characteristic of 8th Street Is everybody on that street from Mulberry out to Liggin Woods. You had a cow, a hog pen, a chicken house, a garden, an outdoor toilet. Now, everybody didn't have all of those, but nobody on the street went hungry. Nobody in the neighborhood, when vegetables come in, you know, if you don't can them, you got them all at one time, so what you do, you share them with the people. You killed hogs. We didn't have refrigeration. You could cure the shoulders, the middlings, and the ham, but the rest of the hog, you had to eat it up, including the chitlins, pig feet, pig ear. Everybody had what? Fresh meat. We shared with each other. As I was coming in out here, a pickup truck stopped, and it was a family that lived just north of me right now in the old Blackman home. And we hadn't seen each other for 10 years, but we were neighbors for a number of years. Mr. Blackman was a commissioner on the Carver County Commission, and they were having a discussion about building a bridge on some of the county roads, whether we should build a permanent bridge or a temporary bridge. And the discussion went on and on. Mr. Blackman told him, "You don't even know the difference in temporary and permanent. I'm drunk. That's temporary. You a fool. That's permanent." You can hear some wonderful stories about the tension that existed after the shooting, but how the people of Tuscumby did not let that become a permanent fixture, a permanent barrier between the races. We all stayed together as neighbors, and that's what I get out of the Will Runs incident, that you can make the best out of the worst of situations, and that's about it. I'll try to answer any questions that we have.
I have one, sir. Like my wife told you, I knew the sheriff's grandson when I lived in Florida, and I didn't know about the story. He never told me. I only found out about the story after I moved back here in probably 2000, something like that. But I've been in journalism all my life, since I was 15, you know. And so I looked up in the archives that story, and I was shocked, and yet I was, you know, having grown up in the Deep South like you, was not shocked at the description where they referred to him as the Negro throughout that story. And I'd like you to maybe tell me about your feelings about, in other words, they were trying to write a story. They were doing it in their time and in their space and all of this, but it is so contrasting to the way we would cover a story today, in that clearly race played a big role in the writing of that story.
Well, you're absolutely right, because the lady that wrote the story for ABC Television Network took it from the standpoint of the actual events and how they occurred. And when you look at it, it was sort of foolish. I mean, cooler heads could have prevailed. After the sheriff was shot, and his brother, they went and told him he didn't hesitate. He gonna go up there by himself
Yeah.
and go up on that porch. And this man is sitting there with a Winchester rifle. They didn't stop and analyze this situation. What really, and the Southern Railroad was the biggest industry going on at that particular time. The machinists went on strike, and this is sometimes after the incident occurred, and they were all of the supervisors. And the black workers at the Southern shop kept the railroad running. They did all the work until the machinists got union satisfaction and went back to work. And they looked at it from the standpoint that this is important to us from an economic standpoint. Let's don't destroy what little we have as a result of this particular incident. And people really realized how much we were independent on each other. Your chicken house, your garden, your washing, you never move laundry, you never move dry cleaning. So those little things that we did for each other, even though we were in a suburban, servant role, that it was essential to the well-being of the community, and cooler heads prevail. Let's don't let this thing get out of hand here, and people walking up and down the street expressing their opinion about it, because somebody gonna do what? Pull their gun. And it was a lesson to us all that even under adverse circumstances, we are somewhat interdependent upon each other. Because she, the aristocratic white woman, she didn't change no more. So it was those little things. Everybody had, who could afford it, had what? Had a cook, a maid. And you think about it, you got to change the diapers, change the bed, wash the clothes, clean up the house. He said, yes, ma'am.
What year did this incident take?
April 1905.
1905. I missed that a little while ago.
April 1905. Sunday morning.
They should have been in church. What happened?
Now this is another story in itself. The history of the black church in Tuscany. You'll notice that First Baptist is still in its present location, but the United Methodists were across the street from the city hall there where Mr. Carmichael had his law office. That's where the first United Methodist Church was, right there on that corner. They built a new church in 1927. Most church bells are cast iron, but the church bell out of the original Methodist church built in Tuscany is a bronze bell, and they gave it to Mount Carmel Missionary Baptist Church, which is on South Mulberry Street in Tuscany, and that bronze bell is sitting out there on a stand. And if you've ever been to the University of Alabama and heard the bell strike in the bell tower down there, it's a bronze bell. And this bell out here is the same size as that bell, and it's on a stand down there at Mount Carmel Church right now. But maybe one of these days we'll build a bell tower on the courthouse lawn, take that bell and put it in there. But you haven't heard the sound of a bell till you hear that bell clang. Because it's bronze. The bell in the courthouse is cast iron. You can hear it all over Tuscany. You can imagine. You can hear that bronze bell. That used to be in the First United Methodist Church, just sitting on a stand down there. I give that illustration.
Always wondered.
We didn't destroy ourselves as Tuscumbans as a result of an incident that separated a whole lot of communities. They never lived it down. But we haven't lived this down, but we have not let it encompass us to direct our feelings toward each other.
In your opinion, that's something uniquely Tuscumbia? If it happened anywhere else?
Well, I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Such incidents have occurred in other places, and it was a divisive instrument. People still don't trust each other. What you guys spoke?
Well, I just had a comment, piggybacking off of you, Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
and your question too. I think some of the best stories that I've heard about Black history is something that I can't find like on the internet or that was published in a
Okay, sit
newspaper,
down.
published in books. Because there was a lack of resources during that time, and we don't really have like a Black perspective. So things that you do find, they were written by, white authors, white journalists. But I think one thing that Tuscany really does a good job of is having those stories told, preserving that oral history. And I mean, it's one thing that you can be proud of with this town. Like, we don't have just a tainted history. I'm proud to be from Tuscany. I lived in Atlanta for 6 years, and I finally said I'm coming back home.
Good for you.
Because you do, it's just, places you have pride in, because we never had those racial tensions. You never have stories that you're just mortified to tell about your hometown. So something to be proud of.
There was not one single incident of a barn being destroyed, a house burned, a hanging, a lynching, as a result of that. I mean, people really had something to be mad about. But then they told the story from the perspective, why would the fool drive the truck right up there and side of the door? I mean, why would they put a bale of cotton on the sledge and try to drive the mule up there and the man shot the mule? When you really start looking at it, you say cooler heads prevail. And on a railroad crew at that particular time was made up of the engineer. That was a white job. A fireman. That was a black job. Brakeman. That was a black job. But a conductor, even on the freight trains and the passenger train, it was classified as a white job. But the economy of it supported the community, and it was recognized by the folks. Well, you got your job and I got my job, but both of us are working. We both got a payday. That's what counts. Even they had just established in 1893 Trenholm High School, the first black high school, 12th grades for blacks in northwest Alabama. And people from Russellville, Cherokee, Leaden, Town Creek, even Sheffield came to Tuscany because that was before they had a public high school for blacks.
We also had one of the first schools for girls as well, right?
Yes.
We were one of the first to educate girls.
And about Trenholm, I've always thought the school board, who I was on in renaming Southside Elementary, and my grandson goes to GW Trenholm, he calls it GW, but was a nice gesture by the school board.
Well, really, G.W. Trenum was the first school to be named after a black in northwest Alabama. Got down in Lawrence County, a lot of, now don't start me about a lot of see, I tell people we didn't have school integration, you had school elimination. You closed all the black schools and said you got freedom of choice, and the only one you could go was to the white school.
I'm afraid of
Do you know that in Lauderdale County school system, they had 4 black principals at that time and over 30 black teachers in the Lauderdale County school system, and today you don't have a single one, not a black principal anywhere, or a black teacher in the Lauderdale County school system. You cut off your nose to spite your face, you come back to haunt you every time.
I always keep,
Yes,
I'm
sir.
sorry.
Colonel, I heard you speak of your family on radio, listen to your program. The Reynolds, the last name, I heard you mention that the Reynolds, sometimes being part of your family. I was wondering what's this man in relation to you?
No, that question was asked. My mother was a Reynolds,
Right.
and she came from Lawrence County. she was no kin to Will Reynolds. Tell you about that. My grandfather came to Lawrence County was a manservant to General, well, he was Captain Gorgas at that time, and he came to operate the ferry across the river at Brown's Ferry, and the Corps of Engineers operated the ferries at that particular time. He came to Lawrence County from Lake Charles, Louisiana, as a manservant to Captain Gorgas. And when Captain Gorgas was transferred from Brown's Ferry to go to the Panama Canal Zone, he decided that he didn't want to go to Panama. He stayed in Lawrence County. That was during Reconstruction. And he started out as a merchant at a little store. And he was furnishing farmers. At that particular time, all of the land between the railroad and the river was federal property in Lawrence County. And General Wheeler was the U.S. Marshal for the distribution of land during Reconstruction. There wasn't nobody to give 40 acres and a pair of mules to, so he kept it for himself. That's actually what happened. So when he died, he owned 16,000 acres of prime land in Lawrence County that had never been surveyed because it was all prime property. And my grandfather was operating a store in Hillsborough, furnishing people who got 40 acres and a pair of mules under Reconstruction. And when he died in 1926, he owned 2,600 acres because people had moved off and left and he foreclosed on it. I mean, you have to take advantage of situations.
Exactly.
That's what happened. That's how General Joe Wheeler got his property, and that's how other people in Lawrence County got their property. But back to Tuscumby, Tuscumby has always been a center of transportation because, you know, the old L&N Railroad used to leave here to go Lawrenceburg, Tennessee to Nashville. North Alabama Railroad left here and went to Russellville, Red Bay on down to Pash, Alabama, where the train came out of Columbus, Mississippi, going into Birmingham. And you had a train that left Memphis in the morning and one left Chattanooga in the morning, and they'd always meet right here at 12 o'clock and change crews. So right across the street, it used to be Lawrence Chevrolet corner. Lawrence Chevrolet on this corner there, right across the street from it used to be a barn. Now I remember that because I celebrated my 92nd birthday. It used to be a barn right across the street where they built their gym there. And right across the street was the old hotel. People would come in on the train, rent a buggy, and go to the outlying areas, come back. I remember when that barn just right across the street from where the Blanc Chevrolet on the corner. But the station is still there. But there are so many things that remind you of what Tuscumbia, how it started and what it used to be. It's still standing, but people don't know about it. Yes, sir.
Could you speak about the hospitality that Tuscumbia has shown over its existence to Native Americans and even to the Union soldiers when they came through during the war?
Well, I don't know that much about that.
I was saying, you old, but you're not that old.
I didn't say that.
Oh, you can say it. That's funny.
But Tuscumbia was the center of movement here. The crews changed. When the trains left Chattanooga in the morning, left Memphis, they would change crews here and refuel the engines. That was an economic boom to you. Yeah. My father was a fireman on the railroad. To go out one day at 12 o'clock, come back 12 o'clock the next day. We had a rule at home on the day before he went out. We all had to sit down and eat together. Yeah. And he said, well, if you got in trouble, you got in while I was gone, because they were at home when I left and at home when I got back.
What route was that he was on?
He was on the Memphis division.
My
35
great-uncle,
and 36.
my great-uncle was a conductor on that train.
Well, but the crews were made up of jobs designated black or white. If you're an engineer, that's a white job. If you're a conductor, that's a white job. If you're a fireman, that's a black job. If you're a brakeman, that's a black job. And everybody understood that. That was the system at that time.
When did that change?
When they went from coal-fired engines to diesels.
I know we're getting into the next program.
Before you had coal.
Yes, you had wood before you had coal. People made a living cutting wood and were stocking at stops, different stops along the road to put the wood on the engine.
Now what was Percy Ricks?
Percy Ricks was a fireman, and then when they got diesel engines, he was later promoted to an engineer.
Was he the first?
As the first black engineer.
So that's the next program was about the railroad.
Yeah.
Oh, I had a question. I'm back to the Reynolds because I was wondering that this morning. So does Will Reynolds have any relatives in here?
No.
He
None,
was
none
he?
that claim me.
And that's it.
No. People were just given names.
Oh.
Now, when he was when he was killed, brother, in this shootout, there is no record of a death certificate, any documentation on the disposition of his body. When this lady came in from ABC, she went to the courthouse, she went to the health department, but person died. First thing when you're born, you get a birth certificate. When you die, you got to have an official death certificate. You make a record of it. Even slaves, when they died, the owner had to go to the courthouse and register whether they were sold or the disposition or whatever, because they were property, they were chattel.
And how old was he when he died?
My father?
No, Will.
Will runs, nobody knows. There's no record.
There's no record of his birth or his death.
There's no record of his birth or his death.
How far back did those railroad, I can't think of the right word, anyway, their history and their employment and all that, is there a record of pre-Civil War and all?
Oh, yes, ma'am. The railroad has records of that down at the Depot Museum right now. you can go down and go on the second floor. They have some documentation on the history of railroad, North Alabama Railroad, the L&N Railroad that operated here from Nashville, went right behind the North Side School out there. Part of that track is still out there. If you go out across Cox Boulevard and you cross that railroad, that's part of the old L&N Railroad that started in Sheffield and came back on out. We were sort of a center of transportation here because the river was not navigable. You couldn't get the barge down the river because of the depth of the water from Decatur to Tuscumby. So everybody had put their cargo on the railroad and ran it from Decatur down to Tuscumby, and then they put it back on
It's
the
too
river
shallow.
going down. It's too shallow till they built Wilson Dam and Wheeler Dam. And today, the good Lord is taking care of all that.
More ways than one.
I think you've already answered this question, but I noticed in your bio that you worked at least for a little while at the Reynolds Funeral Home in Decatur.
Yes, ma'am.
I happen to be from Decatur originally, so I wondered if you knew if Will Reynolds was any related
My uncle.
No,
George?
to the Reynolds in Decatur.
No, ma'am.
she was asking, yeah.
I mean, I think you've already answered that, you didn't know any of his relatives and so
No,
on.
that's two separate identities.
Okay,
And
but I did notice
the
that.
Will Reynolds had, people used to give him a name.
Yeah.
There are a lot of families.
Sure. I was just curious when I saw that Reynolds Funeral Home, because I was familiar with that.
Well,
funeral.
that's where I learned to embalm. George Reynolds was my uncle,
Okay.
but my mother's brother.
Was your mother
It's
born in
interesting.
Lawrence County?
Ma'am?
Was your mother born in
No,
Lawrence?
she was born in Lake Charles, Louisiana. My grandfather was a manservant to Captain Gorgas.
Oh, you said that, I'm sorry.
And he came from Lake Charles, Louisiana to Browns Ferry. And there were 13 children. My mother was the oldest of the group. So it's some interesting history. I had a chance there, but I just couldn't take advantage of it.
That's the part I don't believe, what you said, what you told today.
Yeah, mine has, I retired from, I terminated my military career 31 December 74 and went to work 1 January 75. And then I purchased the funeral home in 1982 and retired from UNA in 1984. So it's just.
You went a little
I'm living
longer
right
at
now.
UNA.
Right now, huh?
You went a little longer at
I
UNA.
went a little longer at UNA. but
89.
Anyway, Thompson and Son Funeral Home was established by the Thompson family in 1922. We're the oldest continuously owned and operated family business in Northwest Alabama. So
right?
in 1922 will be 100 years old. And after that celebration, I'm going to retire. I tell all my friends, I'm planning on living. I'm just going to take care of your dying. I have no regrets about it. If you go from Tuscumby to New York, to Stuttgart, Germany, going around to Cairo, Egypt, on down to Dhahran, Saudi Arabia, on around to Karachi, Pakistan, turn around and come back, and then go to San Francisco, to Hawaii, to Guam, to Philippines, go on around to Saigon, and go on around to New Delhi, India, turn around and come back. I never was able to get from New Delhi, India, around to Karachi, Pakistan. I can say I physically been around the world.
So you served in World War II?
Yes.
That's great.
So thank you for your service.
Thank you. I thank you. Appreciate it. Oh, yeah. Because I'm 92 and still looking forward to the future, so
That's a good thing.
always keep your eye on the prize. No, I've been tremendously blessed with good parents. I was in the 4th grade in school. My father was a fireman on the railroad, and he overhauled boxcars at the southern shops over in Sheffield. And they threw all that old scrap lumber away. We got out of school, we had to go out to the southern shop and pick up all that scrap lumber and come back, knock the nails out of it and square it off and stack it. When he got enough lumber accumulated, he built a house. When he retired from the railroad, he had 16 rent houses.
Wow.
And I can show you documents right now where they got the circle with the X in it. If you talk to him, he listened to the news on the radio every day, I bet you. And anybody coming along selling a magazine or a newspaper, he'd buy it. And couldn't read, couldn't sign his name or read a lick. But if he talked to you, you think he's well educated because he listened to the news and would do anybody a favor.
She asked who would read to her.
I said, who would read to him?
My mother.
Okay.
And high school students used to come to our house to do their research because we had all kind of dictionaries and encyclopedias. You'd ask Mama a question, she said W-E-S-T-E-R. I heard that all my life. You never know something.
Now it's G-O-O-G-L-E.
And that's gonna come back to haunt us.
It is, it is.
Because children, students in school now do not learn verbal communication.
You're right.
I've talked to many people who work on newspapers and preachers in seminary school. The students that they're getting right now, they cannot communicate verbally. I call them finger-licking preachers. You see them, they don't pull out the Bible, they pull out the cell phone.
They get their news from Facebook and.
Yeah, that's where they get the news from. But we were taught to communicate verbally and to read.
Read is number one.
Read number one.
That would have been the 30s, like 1930s when you were.
Well, yes, early 40s, late 30s, early 40s. Well,
Colonel, thank you for sharing with us.
Yeah, this has been great. This has been great.
I got another story I tell about the black churches in Tuscaloosa. It's something else. You see where First Baptist is located, the Presbyterian Church and the Methodist Church used to be right across from Mr. Carmichael's office there. Well, slaves used to drive the buggy, bring people to church on Sunday morning. And they'd all gather under the shed down there at Webb's Gym. And that's where the black church started.
Oh.
They drive the buggy to church, and then and it was convenient for all those churches. They had the buggies all parked down there, and while everybody else was at church, they would have church under the shed down there at the gym. That's where the black church started. The first church that was built was a Methodist church built right across the street there where Basden's bus comes. And back in those days, they didn't have air conditioning and so forth, and the church was open. And you know, we sang and rejoice in church. You get loud, and then the white church was right there on the corner. They made them move that church.
Which church was that?
First
The
United
Methodist,
Methodist Church is
the
right here in 1927. They
Was
built
it
a new
Presbyterian?
church, but the church used to be right down the hill.
It's just too loud over there. It just got too loud for them.
It got too loud for them. And that's actually true. And First Baptist bought a lot out there where First Baptist is located now. And the Methodist Church bought a lot right down the street from it and moved that church over there. Another Methodist church over here on the corner of 4th and Washington Street. And over there, around the tank over there, that used to be black neighborhood over there.
I wonder why they didn't move the bell. They could have showed those
No,
Baptists up.
they didn't appreciate what they had at that particular time. But I man,
Throw it out, throw the baby out the bathroom.
it's a bronze bell. If you pass by,
I've seen it all my life, I didn't know what it
that bell
was.
sitting out there? I tell them all the time, that's something of historic thing, because you don't find many of them.
It'll last forever, being bronze.
Bronze, and man, you told the bell in the bell tower at the University of Alabama is a bronze bell. And you hear that thing bong, you can hear it all over the time. You used to could hear that bell being rung all the time, because old man Mac Hogan was a member of, he was the custodian for the First Presbyterian Church. He'd come down and light the fire and toll the bell at First Presbyterian. And then he'd come on up and light the fire, toll the bell at the Methodist Church. And I remember when he did that. I mean, that's a relationship that we've had that's part of the history of Tuscany. That, you know, not shared and not known. We don't talk about it. But you couldn't get under the shed down here for the horse and buggies. Because they'd come to First Baptist, they'd come to First United Methodist, come to the Presbyterian Church, and they'd take the horse and buggies and go on down there on that shed, and that's where the black folks, the Methodists had church on 1st and 3rd, and the Baptists had on 2nd and 4th. And that was just part of our history.
Well, we are having a tour, aren't we, Lori? I can't remember
We have a
dates.
church tour, a trolley tour, where you get to get out and go in the churches, I believe March 23rd.
March 23rd, y'all come to our church, and I'll show you the original
We
furniture.
were actually counting
That
on
was
that.
in
We
the
had you
First
listed as Jason.
I'll show you the lights that was in the First Presbyterian Church.
Well, that's a preview. Now, I was gonna say, and then now maybe we can add the bell. You're talking about that bell?
Go down to the corner of 8th and Trump, and it's a bell, it's a bronze bell sitting outside.
I didn't know about the bell.
Was it manufactured by the same people that manufactured the one down at Alabama?
I don't know, but I know the bell in the bell tower at the University of Alabama is a bronze bell.
I bet they were.
I think our trolley tour will be First
Most of them are cast
Presbyterian,
iron.
Leslie Temple,
Yeah.
First Baptist.
We could go around the block and see that